Hello, and welcome to the Inner Noise, the podcast to get back to yourself. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, again? Again, this situation? Again, this reaction? Again, that feeling of being stuck in the same place, the same pattern, the same thought going around and around? Like you know the script by heart, like you already know exactly how it's going to end, and yet you play the scene again. You live through the same thing again. You eat the same hole. And what exhausting isn't the pattern itself? It's not understanding why. You work on yourself, you question yourself, you read, you listen, you search, you try to change. And something resists. Something deep down stays exactly in the same place. That's something today we are going to give it a name. And to do that, we are going to go down into a cave. Last week, we talked about Aristotle, a man who watched people live, who believed the body knows before the mind does. That imbalance sets in when we drift away from our deeper nature. Where Aristotle started from experience, his teacher went further. He questioned what we perceive in the first place. Today, we go one step further back. Because before Aristotle, there was his teacher. And his teacher had an even more radical question. Not just why do we drift away from ourselves, but did we ever really know who we were to begin with? Plato, we talk about him, you guessed that, isn't he? Lived in Athens in the 4th century BC. A student of Socrates, founder of the Academy, the first great school of philosophy in the Western world. A man who spent his entire life asking a single question in 1,000 of different forms. Do we actually see what is real? That's a question. Plato didn't trust appearances, not because he was suspicious of or paranoid, but because he had observed something fundamental about human beings. We, human, confuse what we see with what is real. We confuse what we've learned to believe with the truth. We confuse shadows with light. And to explain this, he told a story, a simple story, almost childlike in its form. And yet, 25 centuries later, it says something precise about what you're living through. Let me tell it to you. Imagine a group of prisoners. They've been there since birth, chained inside a cave, seated with their backs to the entrance. They can't move, they can't turn around. For as long as they can remember, their entire world is that wall in the front of them. Behind them, there's a fire. And between that fire and them, silhouettes pass by, objects, shapes, figures. These shapes cast shadows on the wall, and the prisoners watch those shadows. They always have. These shadows, for them, are reality. It's all they've ever known. They give them names, they debate about them, they build their certainties on top of them. Their entire world is made of these projections. And one day, one of them is freed. He turns around, the firelight blinds him. It's painful, disorienting. Everything he thought he knew looked nothing like what he expected. He walks out of the cave. The sunlight is even more violent, even harder to bear. But gradually, his eyes adjust, and he sees that what he had taken for reality was only the reflection of a reflection, a copy of a copy, a shadow on a wall. Plato called this leaving the cave. What about your shadows? I'm not talking to you about philosophy. I'm talking to you about you. Because your cave exists, and your shadows, you know them well. You talk to them every day. You turn them into certainties. You build entire decision on top of them. And this sounds like, that's just who I am. I'll never really make it. I have to earn my place. If I let go, everything will fall apart. That's not for someone like me. Well, you might not say these things out loud. They are not always this clear. Sometimes they are just a feeling, a reflex, an automatic way of positioning yourself in a situation. But they loop and repeat for a long time now. And here is what this metaphor allows us to see. These beliefs often don't come from you, they were projected onto you by experiences, by authority figures, by repeated wounds, by an environment that taught you to adapt, to protect yourself, to stay small, or to constantly overperform. You've been watching them for so long that you took them for yourself. You believed that was your nature. But maybe it's a construction. And that's a huge difference. Because a construction can be taken apart. So why? Why is it so hard to change? Why do we know somewhere inside that something isn't working and keep going anyway? Plato's metaphor sheds light on this mechanism. Because the light hurts. Literally, in the metaphor, the prisoner who turns around is blind. The light he discovers is violent. It calls into question everything he knew, everything he had built his world on. And that is not comfortable. Seeing things as they actually are means accepting that you weren't seeing them before. It means letting go of certainties that were protecting you. Certainties that, even when painful, at last had the advantage of being familiar. The familiar uncomfortable versus the unfamiliar possible. And the brain, by survival reflex, almost always chooses the familiar. That's why you go back to the same pattern. Not because you're weak, not because you don't really want to change, not because something is broken in you, but because something in you learned that the shadow was safe. And that turning around is frightening. Plato doesn't say it's easy to leave the cave. He even says that the prisoner who returns to free the others is not welcomed. The others prefer their shadows. They don't want to be disturbed. That's true for groups. And it's also true for you internally. There is a part of you that resists, a part that prefers the certainty of being stuck to the uncertainty of moving. And what I want you to take away today is not to fight that part, it's to recognize it, accept it. Because the first step is not leaving the cave, it's noticing that you're in one. Feeling that this wall, these shadows, these certainties you've built, maybe they're not telling the whole story. Maybe there's something behind them, something you can't quite see yet. That feeling you get sometimes, that diffuse unease, that sense of going in circles. That's not a flow, that's a signal. Something in you that has known for a long time that there's something else. It's not asking you to change everything at once. It's just asking you to turn around a little, to look at what has been casting these shadows for so long, and to ask yourself one single question. That belief right there, that way of seeing yourself, that story you've been telling yourself for years, is that actually you? Or is it a shadow you learned to call by your own name? That's Plato's question. It's also the one I explore with my clients session after session. If this resonated with you, I've wrote a free guide that helps you to start this work on your own. You'll find the link in this episode description. Next week, we continue this journey with Buddha and an idea that will change the way you see discomfort. Take care of yourself. You were listening The Inner Noise, the podcast to get back to yourself. See you next week. Thank you.